Hi, welcome to the March wrap-up. I've got a full battery and an empty SD card, so we should be good. Nothing's going wrong. I've finally learned my lesson the hard way many times, so we should be okay this time. Fingers crossed. So March was a pretty good month for the most part. I had a few trials and tribulations towards the end of the month. I just had a new roommate move in, my bedroom floor had to be replaced due to water damage, and a wicked ice storm took out the power for 24 hours, and all three of those things happened like one day after the next, so the end of the month was not the best for me in terms of just having time for reading, obviously. I was not able to do a whole lot of reading towards the end of the month, so my number of books read and page count is a little bit lower than I would like it to be, but that is okay. So in March, I was able to read 13 books and DNF'd 2, which was a total of 4,887 pages with 57 audiobook hours. We'll do the DNFs real quick. Both of them were for this round of Backlist Bash. The first one was Deeplight by Frances Hardinge, I think is the name. I don't think this would have been a bad book, it just wasn't for me. The main character is 14 and that was extremely apparent. I just really could not get behind reading from the POV of a 14-year-old, so DNF that one. And then I also DNF'd The Beautiful by Renée Ahdieh, very sadly. I was loving the first like 50 pages or so, and then all of a sudden that went swiftly downhill. Once the love interest was introduced, I got such a major ick from him, and also got the ick from the female main character. Just seeing how the two of them interacted for the first time just completely put me off from this book. He's like super dramatic and like just cringe as all hell, and I didn't like her like stomping feet and whatever the hell she was doing. It was a lot and way too much for me personally, so just cut my losses with this one. Moving on to the ones that I did read. First up was Weird Fishes by Mariz. This is a very strange little sci-fi novella about a squid-like creature that comes up from the deep of the ocean when they realize that the currents are slowing down, so they come up to try and figure out what's going on and run into a seal creature, like kind of like a selkie kind of thing, but not quite, and the two of them adventure together trying to figure out what's going on. This was such an interesting book. The title is very appropriate. This was indeed quite strange, and I loved it for that. It had lots to do with climate change and grief and family and found family and all these beautiful things. It was such a fantastic little book. I read it over ebook, so it did take me quite a while to get through it, which was nice to just be able to take my time with this book and really absorb it. And yeah, I had a really fun time with this book. I gave it a solid 4-star. The atmosphere was definitely the best part of this book. It was very visual, very colorful in my head. I had a really fun time with this book, and I really want to read more from this author. After that, I read Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor, the sequel to Daughter of Smoke and Bone, and had such a good time with this book. Oh my god. I liked book 1 a bit better. Book 2, the ending was fantastic. The entire last half of the book was phenomenal, but the first half did take me a while to get into it. It wasn't quite as engrossing as I wanted it to be, but by the end of it I was fully sucked in and had such a good time. Oh my god, that ending was incredible. Everything is so interesting. I can't wait to read the last book. I don't think I'll have space for it on my TBR in April, but like if I can get to it I will, because god damn, I really want to. But if I can't in April, I definitely will in May. And this one I also gave 4 stars to. Then I read the next 2 books in the Innkeeper Chronicles series by Ilona Andrews, which were, what are they called? One Fell Sweep and Sweep of the Blade. These are books 3 and 4, and they were so much fun. One Fell Sweep is definitely my favorite book in the entire series so far. I think it was so well written. I loved the plot, I loved the different characters that were introduced, the banter between everybody, like everything was just so perfect. I gave that one a 4.5 star, and Sweep of the Blade actually follows a different character. It was a character that was introduced in book 3, and it's kind of her story and what's going on there, which is also fantastic. I absolutely loved it. This one is a very close second favorite. I gave it 4 stars, but it's like almost a 4.5. It's like a 4.25. It was so exciting, and I was like fully locked into that story the whole time. These were both fantastic books. I really love this series. They're so much fun. I especially love the dramatized audiobooks that are on Everand. They're such a blast to read. They have like music and sound effects and all these battle sounds, and it's just such a good time. They're full cast as well, which is great. But yeah, thoroughly enjoying the series. I can't wait to continue with it. Hopefully this month I'll be able to finish out the series. Fingers crossed there. And then after that I ended up binging 3 books in the same series. So those ones were Witch Please, Boss Witch, and Extra Witchy by Aguirre. I had read The Only Purple House in Town, which is the 4th book in that series, I think at the end of last year, and had a great time with it. It was so much fun. It's a series of contemporary paranormal romances that are all companion novels, so it doesn't really matter what order you read them in. So yeah, I read book 4 last year and loved it, and then just ended up binging the rest of the series in the span of like I think 3 or 4 days. All 3 of those ones got 4 stars, but Extra Witchy is definitely my favorite in the series. I absolutely adore that couple. They were so good, especially the male main character. He had a lot of struggles with mental health, and I love how that was addressed in the story. I loved his whole character arc and how he had to learn to love himself enough to take care of himself. And with her as well being this like hyper independent woman, very, very strong, and having to learn to trust somebody enough to let them into her life. They were such a perfect couple for me. It was also a marriage of convenience, which is one of my favorite romance tropes. So while the series as a whole is fantastic, Extra Witchy was just a little bit extra good. Next up, I was finally able to get to this absolutely stunning edition of Swordheart by Kingfisher. This is one of my favorite authors of all time, and I'm so glad that I have this beautiful, beautiful book on my shelf. And happy to say the inside contents are just as beautiful as the outside. I loved this book so much. This is a cozy fantasy about a middle-aged woman who is a widow. After her husband died, her uncle-in-law took her in, and she finds this magic sword in the house and discovers a man is trapped inside the sword and is now there to serve her, and things go from there. It was such a fun book. It was ridiculous. These two are hysterical. They're so funny together. They're both sarcastic and witty. Their banter is top notch. It was so good. I had an amazing time reading this book. I gave it a 4.5 star. It was just about a 5 star but didn't quite get there. My 5 stars are usually reserved for things that have a more emotional response, and this one almost did but not quite. It was like 2 points away from being 5 stars. But yeah, I'm so glad that I finally read this book. It's been on my TBR for a hot minute just because I want to read everything from this author, and I'm really glad that I finally got to this one, and I can't wait to get to the other books that are set in the same world. Next up was Honor Bound by Caine and Aguirre. I read a lot of Aguirre this month, and actually all 4 of those books were pretty much all in the same week, but Honor Bound is the second book in the Honor Among Thieves trilogy. I read the first book for Backless Bash in February, I want to say, maybe January, either way, recently. Book 2 was really fun, very action-packed. I definitely enjoyed it, but I do have the same critiques about this one as I did about book 1, and that is that it's just action after action after action. There's very little quiet space in between to just get to know the characters and the world. The characters are always in the midst of something very dramatic happening, or they're prepping for something to happen, and I just wish that it was a little bit slower paced just to give it some breathing room, because it feels very much, you know, it's just kind of a lot. But definitely still a fun book, and I do recommend this series, and I gave this one a 3.5 star. Next up, I read Water Moon by Samantha Sotto Yambao. This is a cozy fantasy that feels very Ghibli. It's very dreamlike, about a woman who is the owner of a magical pawn shop that is inside of a ramen shop, and sometimes people who are trying to get to the ramen shop, they'll open the door and find themselves inside of this pawn shop instead, and they're able to sell their regrets. This was a beautiful story. The imagery in here, the atmosphere was just incredible. Oh my god. I loved the dreamlike feel of it. It felt very misty. Does that make sense? Like I was just kind of in this cloud while reading this book. It was great. I loved it for that. However, in terms of the actual plot, same as Honor Bound, it was just one thing after another. And while all of the things that were happening were super interesting, there was a lot of really cool things happening that were very imaginative. It did kind of feel like all of these really cool things were happening just for the sake of something interesting happening, you know? And while the writing was really beautiful, I found the dialogue to be kind of awkward and stilted, which was so strange because the writing in between the dialogue, stunning. So gorgeous. There are so many beautiful quotes in this book, but the actual speaking parts were really awkward sounding. So I definitely recommend this book. It was beautiful. It just had a couple of things that were a bit of a miss for me, so I gave it a 3.5 star. And then finally, my last 3 books of the month were all for Backless Bash, so I won't go too into detail with those ones. But first up was The Luminous Dead by Starling. This one I also gave a 3.5 star to. I liked the potential of this book. There were some things that were done very, very well. It was definitely definitely really creepy towards the end of it, but there were a lot of choices that the author made with the plot that had they gone a different route, it could have been such a good horror book, but because they made the choice that they did, it ended up just kind of falling flat for me in the horror element of it and ended up being kind of cheesy in a lot of spots, so I gave it a 3.5 star. It was a 3-star, but the last like 10 to 15% of it was so creepy. That little bit towards the end was exactly what I wanted from the entire book, so I bumped it up to a 3.5 star. And then The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is one of my favorite authors of all time, and I'm so happy to have finally picked up this book from her. This is a cozy sci-fi, and it definitely lived up to the hype. I gave it a 4.5 star and just had the best time at reading this book. And you can hear more of my thoughts on it in Backless Bash, which I'll leave linked down below. And finally was Vicious by VE Schwab, which I also gave a 4.5 star to. This was phenomenal. It was so compelling, so interesting. I loved the characters and the plot, everything about it. Similar to Swordheart, it just didn't quite have the emotional element for me, but it was so close. I was starting to get very emotionally invested in it, but just didn't quite get there by the end of it. So 4.5 star. This was a nearly perfect book for me. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in March. Not the most in terms of quantity, but there were some great quality reads in here, which is always preferred. I did have 2 other reads that I started in March, but I didn't get to the halfway mark but before the end of the month, so those will go towards my April stats. But yeah, that'll be all for today, so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.